So Naser, thank you for joining me and answering my questions about data and analytics. Could you please give me a bit of background about yourself and what you do at Hitachi Vantara?
Yes, hi, I'm Naser Ali. I've been with Hitachi Vantara since August because that's when the company was created. And I've been with Pentaho 6 months prior, so I've been in the company for about a year. I run solutions marketing, effectively product marketing for EMEA, for the Pentaho element, the data analytics part of Hitachi Vantara. But my background, I've been in IT for 20 years. About half of that has been in infrastructure, data centers, cloud, etc. And the other half has been in data analytics, particularly big data, Hadoop.
Now that we're in February, what key things do you think will come to the forefront in data and analytics this year?
So to the forefront of data analytics this year, there are trends that have been going on for decades now. So I mentioned in my talk this morning that the cost of compute, the cost per gigaflop was 145 billion in 1961. In the year 2000, it was $1,000, and now it's 3 cents. So there is that constant application, effectively, of Moore's law that's going on. That's democratizing the ability to use basically supercomputing. The supercomputing on the cheap is what's actually happening, and that is something that will really come home in the next few years, particularly.
So Naser, how far is Hitachi Vantara into its data and analytics strategy?
As a vendor, how far are we into this strategy? So our strategy is really to help take away what is the dirty secret within the big data industry. The big challenge to almost everyone is the lack of skills. And there are far more data scientists positions available than there are people to fill them, particularly high quality ones. So one of the things we really focused on with our Pentaho data integrator is the ability to abstract above that challenge of finding those skills. And 3 examples of that. One is in data preparation, actually finding the data, preparing it, cleansing it, transforming it, ready to actually be consumed. The other thing is the tool itself has a GUI, so it's self-documenting, it's a layer of abstraction above there, so the documentation is built in. And the third thing is something we called an AEL layer, and that really is, there are basically many compute engines within the big data sphere. There's Spark, Flink, MapReduce, etc., and you hear these words thrown around. And every time you write a complex transformation job, when you're doing something interesting with the data, you then have to recode to do those manually. But what we've done is we've abstracted above that problem, so you can write that transformation once and you can replay it out to any execution engine. So you're future-proofing yourself, and you're also de-skilling the job of actually running that data transformation. So that's our strategy at the moment, is to make it as easy as possible to use these tools.
So Naser, what are the primary objectives for your data and analytics strategy at Hitachi Vantara over the coming year?
So we make it easier, for example, for customers to fill a data lake. So data lakes get talked about a lot in these sort of conferences. So a data lake is basically a playground for you to chuck all your corporate data and to build applications on the top, whether it's fraud detection or whatever like that. Now filling it, actually moving data over from different data silos into the data lake is a challenge in itself, because it needs to be managed and curated and cleansed and ready to be put into a data lake. You don't want a data lake turning into a data swamp, for example. And we can help in that process of filling a data lake versus filling a data swamp. The other thing, another example of what we do in terms of how people could consume it, is streamlining data refinery. So you have people who want to do analytics at the departmental level or at the individual contributor level. They're not necessarily big data experts. They're not necessarily going to write pig Latin scripts for running inside Hadoop, sort of arcane jobs like that. Neither will they be necessarily Java coders, etc. So what you're trying to do is build data marts on the fly, and if you can build a departmental data mart on the fly, then that's much more accessible. It's more ephemeral, but it's much more accessible for the consumer of such technology. Another one would be, ability to do customer 360, for example. So once you've been able to attach all the different data sources, either into your data lake or into some sort of third-party application, and you can again do that via PDI, Pantara Data Integrator, you can then build new services. You can do customer 360. For example, you might have a telecoms operator and they have a customer who's not happy because he's complained on a website. He might also be driving around someplace on the M25 and getting his phone signal cut off when he or she is trying to phone their other half regularly. You might have data from the base station itself. You might have information from the GIS, from the GPS location. So you've got all this different type of data. And if you're trying to reduce churn as a telco provider, for example, and do a customer 360, that's the power we can help customers with, which is to bring that data in together and build a new customer management application, CRM application on top of it.
So what do you think are the key things or thing that has revolutionised the data and analytics industry to date?
Key things that have revolutionised the data and analytics industry, there is so much that's going on. I think cloud is very important for revolutionising the data and analytics industry. I think what it's done is it's allowed people to play, to have to build some use cases, to actually prove utility in what they're doing. And there's so many facilities as a free tier and a lot of the cloud providers. And also they're doing interesting things themselves. So I think Google has something called a TPU, which is around their deep learning TensorFlow system, basically a piece of hardware that'll optimize deep learning type jobs, for example. So that's one of the key things I think has revolutionized the industry. Again, I think open source has been matured. It's now a lot more stable. It's a lot better to use. There's a lot more abstraction above the original problems. At the beginning, these sort of systems are very brittle. It took a lot of resource and a lot of manpower to get them up and running and to manage that. And that has become much easier over time. I think the other thing is just the sheer rate of innovation is so huge. You have new technologies coming along. So a lot of people building streaming applications are using Apache Flink, for example. So there is so much that's revolutionized. I've never worked in an industry that's moved as fast as has the data analytics industry. Lots of new players coming in all the time, lots of new technology paradigms to think through.
How do you think the data and analytics landscape will change over, say, the next year, coming couple of years, and maybe even into 2020 and beyond?
I think the big changes that are coming on, and this was part of my talk this morning, was the change from historical, looking in the rear view mirror analytics, to look forward. I think going from historical to predictive is the huge change. It's now easier to collect data. It's now easier to build models. It's easier to do the data science. It's actually fairly trivial to start training neural networks on your own laptop. And I remember back in my university days, we had large proprietary hardware stacks that were doing a fraction of what you can do now on a laptop, for example. So I think the biggest change really is that switch from historical to go forward, that predictive. And you've got use cases which are usually around schedule optimization, predictive maintenance, that kind of thing, really.
Why did you choose to enter the data and analytics industry?
So I came from a background of working in infrastructure, and things change in the world of infrastructure. They change steadily, and there are some significant things that have happened. In infrastructure, virtualization, for example, containerization has also happened from a microservices point of view. But the real fun stuff was actually really happening in the data analytics industry. I mean, the rate of innovation is off the scale. And actually, it's almost a day job to keep up to date with even half of it. But if you're curious about learning about new technologies, I couldn't think of anywhere more fun to be with. And I think the other thing is that with the industry is you meet so many smart and interesting people in it. People who are actually changing the world. The talk I gave this morning was looking at how saving energy in a particular operation, transportation logistics operation, which sounds quite dull when you think about it just in that context, but that could be helping reduce food scarcity, food insecurity. And it's the ability to change the world for better, I think, which is quite powerful. The world of data analytics can solve a lot of problems that are a problem these days.
What's the best thing that you found so far working in the data and analytics industry?
So my wife was an old school data scientist. She used to take an extract from a data warehouse, put it into Excel, come to some conclusion off the base of that, make some recommendations, put it into PowerPoint. And it's an overused word, the democratization of it, but actually building applications to do, so she would be looking at things like punctuality or the amount of time it takes people to go from one part of an airport terminal to another, for example. That kind of problem that would take years, months to solve, now that you can put sensors in place and you can put technology in place, you can build working models and do things like A/B testing. There's so much more. None of this stuff is new. Statistics isn't new. Bayesian, trees aren't new. But you can start doing A/B testing. You can start doing competing algorithms. You can start doing stuff that you could not do before. And that's to do with the staggering drop in the cost of compute. You remember I mentioned the 145 billion per gigaflop down to 3 cents per gigaflop. And also that effect has impacted networks, storage, compute, everything. And that just enables so many more applications to be built. And that has very positive impact on our life.
If you were granted one wish to change something in the data and analytics industry, what would that wish be?
If I was granted one wish to change the data and analytics industry, it would be to use the right tool at the right place at the right time. There is a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of distraction. It's a very fluid market, and in the same way that some industries have solidified around 2 or 3 key ideas or 2 or 3 key players. So if you're doing data processing at scale, it's probably going to be Hadoop based, or it's going to be, depending on the use case, NoSQL based. There are 2 or 3 things that people will work around. You're going to want to find out the connection of stuff between different things. You're going to look at graph databases, for example. If you want to do transactional analytics, then you work with a particular type of database, etc. So it's really finding the right tool in the right place at the right time. I think that is the wish I would have, is to make it simpler for people to do that.
What has been your biggest challenge or toughest lesson to date in the data and analytics industry?
The toughest challenge is just trying to stay on top of everything. There's a number of analyst reports and customers and stories to appreciate. If you visit enough customers or you read enough analyst reports and you speak to enough people who are smarter than you, you can learn a hell of a lot. And it's just basically staying on top of the volume of knowledge and finding out, you can't actually know everything, but it's important to build networks of people that you know who you can ask. So if you have a question around data in motion, you have a question around stream processing, you have a question around analytics for the masses, you have people that you know you can ask these questions for. So I would say that the toughest challenge is just is knowledge management, I would say.
And finally, could you give me an overview of how you found the event today so far?
I would say it's a good location, very easy to get to. I've appreciated that. It's always a pain to get to places like Excel, And it's also nice to not go to an event that's as big as that. This is a bit more compact. You can get to meet people and have meaningful conversations.
Naser, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon and answering my questions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.